good to go.
We'll just wait for it to come up, Chairman.
Yes, I can confirm the live stream's now working.
Right, Chairman, you're good to go.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this, the third online meeting of the Planning Committee in the current municipal year. On today, Thursday, the 30th of July 2020. I am the Chairman, Councillor Cyril Liddy. This meeting is being broadcast live via Zoom over the internet on the Council's YouTube channel and will also be available to watch afterwards. To begin the meeting, there are a few matters of housekeeping. With the exception of the Democratic Services officers advising us, would all participants please mute their microphones unless they are invited to speak. At the start of the meeting, I will announce by name and invite to speak those participants wishing to make representations to the committee in the order of the business to be conducted. I will ask for the application to be presented by the planning case officer, during which time a visual presentation will be shared. I will ask members of the committee in turn if they wish to ask a question or comment. At the end of each item of business, the Democratic Services officer will ask each committee member to confirm audibly how they wish to vote, and the outcome of each vote will be confirmed by the Democratic Services officer. Subject to the progress of the meeting, I may adjourn the meeting at 8 p.m. for a short break. This is a quasi-judicial committee which makes its decisions based on material planning considerations, following the laws of the land and the policies of the council. If the committee is minded to refuse an application, members will use such considerations and evidence that will stand up in a court of law. The material planning considerations are listed in the council's agenda. Now, I will ask each of the committee members to introduce themselves in turn to confirm that they understand the procedures for the meeting. And we'll start with Councillor Barton, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Lynn Barton, Shrub End Ward, and understood.
Thank you. Councillor Chua, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Chua, Councillor for St Anne's and St John's Ward, and understood.
Thank you. Councillor Hazel, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brian Jarvis, Lexden and Braithwaite Ward, and fully understood.
Thank you. Councillor Loveland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, understood.
Thank you. Councillor McLean, please.
Councillor Jackie McLean, Marksdale Lair Ward, yes, and I understand.
Thank you. Councillor Oxford, please.
Councillor Philip Oxford, Highwoods Ward, and I understand.
Councillor Pearson, please.
Chris Pearson, Beerchurch Ward, Councillor, understand.
Thank you all. Are there any substitutes this evening? Councillor Pearson?
I'm substituting for Councillor Martin Warnes, Chair.
Thank you. There are no urgent items scheduled for this meeting. Are there any declarations of interest in any of the business to be conducted this evening?
Chairman, Councillor Chua is indicating.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm declaring a non-pecuniary interest as I'm the CBC stakeholder governor for the hospital.
Thank you. There are no others. Good. There are no minutes submitted for approval at this meeting. Have your say. For each application, I will announce speakers by name in turn. Those in opposition will be heard first, followed by those in support. Each are allowed to speak for 3 minutes. Visiting councillors are allowed to speak for up to 5 minutes. The Democratic Services officer will announce when the relevant period of time has elapsed, and speakers will be required to stop at that point. Once all representations have been made. I will ask the visiting speakers to leave the meeting. The remainder of the meeting will be available to view on the Council's YouTube channel. Now, I will go through the Have Your Speakers. The first item, 7.1, which is actually 2 items. One is a substantive planning application. The second is a listed building consent. And I have the presenting officer is James Ryan, public against Paul Avison, public for Laura Dudley of Strutt and Parker. Laura Dudley Smith, I do beg your pardon, of Strutt and Parker, and visiting councillors Cope and Crowe will address the meeting. Item 7.
Chairman, Councillor Crowe is no longer attending.
Thank you very much. Item 7.2, land at Brierley, Paddocks, West Mercia. Again, it's James as the presenting officer. Public against Councillor Chris Wood, representing West Mersea Town Council, Robert Stafford and Stephen James. For Richard Winsborough of City and Country, and visiting councillors Moore, Jowers and Davidson will address the meeting. So I will then invite, I'll now invite the speakers. Sorry. I've lost that particular document actually. Right.
Chairman, if you invite Mr. Avison to make a contribution.
I've got it up now. Mr. Avison, would you care to address the meeting, please? You have 3 minutes, and the bell, well, and bell will ring after 2 ordinarily.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I address the committee as a local resident. The location of the Essex County Hospital site is on probably the most important and attractive route into a historic town, and is within a conservation area. Next to our Roman castle site, this must be one of the most important in Colchester, and its development will have a significant impact on the town and on how both residents and visitors view the town. In the application heritage statement 3.7, it says the main hospital building does have landmark quality, although its presence within the streetscape has been eroded by later additions to the front. The outpatients building and radiotherapy departments now occupy prominent positions, but are not deserving of this prominence and detract from the principal listed building. This is referring to the existing outpatients and radiotherapy buildings. It would be just as valid a statement relating to the proposed Lexden Road facing blocks. So the proposal is to replace these Lexden Road fronting buildings with blocks that, by being of no architectural merit and by their size, the northwest block is wider and higher than the current radiotherapy building, are no better than the buildings they replace, and will continue to erode the landmark quality of the streetscape and the main hospital building. Colchester Borough's policy UR2 requires high quality inclusive design that has taken account of the context and will enhance the character of the area. And the policy ENV1 requires development to conserve and enhance the historic environment. I do not believe either of these requirements are met. In the planning officer's report to you, he says, the test before members must be, is the impact on amenity one that materially is harmful to neighbours? The officer considered that it is not, but the test must surely take account of the conservation nature of the area on the impact not just to neighbours, but on all Colchester residents and visitors, who will see this development as one of the first sites on entering the centre of town area. Further, the officer's report does not highlight that almost 60% of objections related to the visual impact along Lexden Road, on the conservation area and on the poor quality of design. If you think the proposals which on Lexden Road are these square, featureless, unimaginative blocks represent conservation and enhancement of the area, and something Colchester and its residents will be proud of, then pass the application. If, however, like many residents, you see this as something that people will pass and forever wonder just how it got permission, then be bold, reject it, and ask the architects involved to produce a design that is more in keeping with the area and that we will all be proud of. The economic viability of the project is no excuse for poor design. I urge you to reject this application in its present form. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Avison. I now call on Laura Dudley Smith, please.
Good evening, members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Stratton Parker are the planning consultant acting on behalf of the applicant, Essex Housing. Essex Housing are Essex County Council's in-house residential development arm, and therefore profits from the development schemes are reinvested into public services delivered by the County Council. Given that Essex County Hospital is an NHS-owned asset, funds from the sale of the site are expected to be reinvested directly into the local NHS trust. The proposals before you this evening are the result of extensive pre- and post-application engagement with Colchester Borough Council since discussions first began in May 2018. The collaborative process has included Historic England, Essex County Council Highways and Essex Police, all of whom support the scheme, and there has also been a full programme of public and political engagement. We are pleased with the results of joint working and are confident of the scheme's ability to ensure the future of this project and its unique heritage assets, alongside providing high quality housing in a highly sustainable location. You will be aware that the principle of development for the site is established through its status as previously developed land and its allocation for residential development in Colchester's local plan. The retention of the principal listed hospital building and other important historic features on the site, including the former nurses' home, are a priority. A number of more contemporary buildings are to be removed and replaced by new homes with an intentional design approach to complement and contrast and not detract from the site's heritage features. Historic England have confirmed that the scale, massing and detailed design of the new build elements of the scheme would be appropriately contextually sensitive and that the proposals overall would not cause an unacceptable level of harm to the significance of the listed building. The reinstatement of a large lawn in front of the main hospital building will reference the original design of the hospital site and alongside further landscaping and tree planting will restore the site's contribution to Lexden Road, the conservation area and this key gateway into Colchester's town centre. In addition to the cost associated with the renovation and restoration of the listed buildings, the Section 106 agreement has been agreed in principle with the council. This is expected to include a commitment to 4 affordable homes, as well as financial contributions to highways improvements for cyclists, local doctors' surgeries, open spaces and other community facilities nearby. A viability review mechanism has also been agreed to ensure that affordable housing contributions are reviewed should the scheme perform better than has been forecast in the viability appraisals completed to date. The town centre location provides an opportunity for exemplary provision in terms of car club vehicles, electric vehicle charging and cycle parking, which will support the allocated parking provided for every unit. The use of ramps and step-free routes across the site will support not only bike users, but also accessibility for any disabled residents or visitors. We hope that you will be able to agree with your officer's recommendation in the interests of ensuring the use and the security of this site and the protection and enjoyment of the important historic assets into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dudley Smith. Councillor Cope, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't intending to speak this evening other than to challenge 1 or 2 questions. I find myself in support of what Paul Avison says. There is a question of overdevelopment. Laura Dudley Smith said that there was engagement with the public, but after there was engagement with the public, they kind of moved the goalposts so that the basis on which the engagement with the public is no longer there. And a whole lot more houses are envisaged, which is different from what the public engagement was. This is a feature of consultations, which is disappointing. We were assured that the traffic impact statement actually demonstrated that there's going to be less traffic than there was under the outpatients. I'm inclined to challenge that. I think with that many houses, that many potentially school children at school the other end of the town, I wonder whether that holds up, that particular analysis, that the traffic impact is going to be less than it was under the outpatients. There are 2 two conflicting views on design have just been heard. One from Paul Addison, that the design feature is something that has attracted most of the comments, but Laura says that the design is the high one. So it's difficult to find the truth between the two. Is it possible to have independent architectural views on that last point as to whether the design is humdrum or interesting? Just a parting shot question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. I'm sure those points will be picked up by James when he comes to giving his presentation. Now, I believe that completes the representations for the Essex County Hospital Trust. I now move to the representations for the land at Brierley Paddocks. And the first speaker is Councillor Chris Wood, please. Again, you have 3 minutes.
Chair, good evening. West Mersea Town Council does not consider that the proposed changes in respect of this application address the principal concerns already expressed, and there has been no consultation with residents on the revisions. In particular, the following points apply. We consider this proposal delivers inappropriate proximity to existing housing stock. Current plans maximise rather than minimise impact on established housing in Seaview Avenue. It is overbearing, out of scale and out of character in terms of appearance due to the relative high density and layout as compared with the existing development. We do not consider that the plan is in accordance with Colchester Planning and Design, DP1, Design and Amenity, in terms of impact on privacy, overlooking, security, noise and disturbance. Specifically, impact of crime and fear of crime. Comments by the Urban Design Consultation, 2nd at 7th, expressed concerns about the landscaping strip, which, they commented, will be difficult to access for maintenance, and creating access through the strip, albeit gated, could compromise security. The plan is not in accordance with Colchester Planning DP1 Design and Amenity, NPFF Para 12F, which defines creating spaces which are safer and where crime and fear of crime do not undermine the quality of life, as laid out in Secure by Design. West Mersea Town Council seeks confirmation that the layout has the approval of the police and that design has the effect of reducing crime and fear of crime per SBD and CPBE. In respect of the layout and density, West Mersea Town Council and residents strongly object to the number of houses in the corner of the site proximus to Farthing's Chase, despite the removal of an apartment block from the boundary of one property. The developer has proposed a landscape barrier, but West Mersea Town Council believe this needs to be wider, separate from the development, and in order to allow for maintenance. In respect of effect of the development character on the neighbourhood, this plan is not in keeping with current housing stock on Seaview. Most of the affordable, lower priced housing is squeezed into one small corner, and West Mersea Town Council requires adjustment to allay residents' concern in this respect. In regard overdevelopment behind established properties, apartments and houses planned are in some cases just 5 metres away from borders and gardens in Seaview, and windows directly face those gardens. This should be avoided. In respect of the seedbed centre, West Mersea Town Council requests that clarification is required. The developer's commitment to the proposed commercial seedbed centre is needed. This element of the development appears to be now subject to commercial criteria. In respect of affordable homes, West Mersea Council asserts that this must be for West Mersea residents and residents of the borough, and we seek that management of affordable homes is granted to a local organisation for the benefit of local and borough residents.
Chairman, that's
In
time.
respect of affordable homes location, the affordable homes
Councillor
still
Wood,
do not
Councillor
appear
Wood,
to be
thank you very much.
integrated into
You've
the
had your-
market housing in
Thank you
accordance with
very
policy
much,
DM8,
Councillor Wood. Thank
but
you.
instead
Thank you. I now call on Robert Stafford. Again, you have 3 minutes to address the committee, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and councillors. My name is Robert Stafford and my wife and I live in the barn at Brierley Paddocks. We consider the use of Brierley Paddocks as an access road to the proposed development is totally unsuitable and unacceptable. Brierley Paddocks is a private driveway owned and maintained by the residents of Brierley Paddocks. It comprises a narrow gravel surface drive serving 5 detached residential properties. The straight section leading from East Road to Brierley Field, measuring 88 metres in length, is the subject of my objection. It has landscaped areas to one side, containing 7 mature trees, a duck pond containing fish, a communal gardening implement storage and recycling waste storage building. The pond serves not only as part of our communal garden, but as a drainage collection point for our service water from the driveway and the surface water from our properties. Either side of the driveway are 2 private residences, i.e. number 78 East Road, whose back garden runs almost the length of the driveway, and a bungalow, number 1 Brierley Paddocks, occupied by a retired couple in their 70s. Their kitchen window and bedroom windows are situated 3 metres from the driveway. If access to the development is granted via this route, then Mr. and Mrs. Sheehan will be subjected to some 400 vehicle movements, comprising cars, motorbikes, delivery vans and lorries, 24 hours a day, 3 metres from their bedroom and kitchen. This is totally unacceptable. Under the proposed plan, it shows a revised road going straight through our implement store and pond and drainage area. This is not acceptable. Further, the driveway divides the area containing our implement building and duck pond from 5 houses. So in order to access these facilities, we would have to cross a new road and footways, assuming of course the building is not removed. The distance between the boundaries of 78 and number 1 Brierley Paddocks is not wide enough to accommodate a road, footways, and necessary separation distance. I would refer you to the Colchester Borough Council Planning Regulations, Backland Development, SPD, Access and Parking Section 6.6. Apart from the aforementioned complications, other areas are of grave concern. Access to East Road will be difficult, especially at core hours. Assuming the occupants of the development have employment and young children, there could be up to a queue of 100 cars plus waiting to join East Road from Brierley Paddocks. Can you imagine the noise and air pollution this would create? 3 metres from Mr. and Mrs. Sheehan's bedroom and kitchen. Secondly, there will be a serious road safety problem here. Patience is not a virtue when it comes to queuing traffic, and I visualise collisions and road rage incidents occurring despite any traffic management alterations or signage. To summarise, the use of Brierley Paddocks, the main access point to this development, is flawed and dangerous, not only residents of Brierley Paddocks, but for the occupants of the proposed development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Stafford. I call on Stephen James. Mr. James, you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thanks. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Mr. James, I think you're unmuted now, so if you try speaking. Chairman, if it was helpful, I could read, we have a copy here of Mr. James's contribution. I could read it out if that would move matters on.
I think so. If that's all right, Mr. James. The Democratic Services Officer will read out your representation. Thank you. Please proceed, Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. Application 2960 takes away enjoyment of property for SVA residents. Human Rights Act 1998 must be considered in every council decision making it unlawful for a public authority to act in a way that is incompatible with a person's rights. Some residents are compelled to take legal action for compensation and escalate beyond Colchester Council. Colchester Council Code states councillors are there to represent their community. If they were listening to their community, they would have met to discuss concerns. The layout has hardly changed despite amendments. Instead, contentious points are sidelined as conditions. The plan does not comply with policy DP1. A tree belt is suggested but not clearly defined, so residents still don't know what they are getting or how it will be managed. Boundary design is an integral plan and should be treated as such. A green is appropriate to protect the enjoyment of residents. Similar developments have issues when maintenance is not enforced, consistent or professional. The report is inaccurate, describing a mix of detached and semi-detached. The area is 99% detached to large properties. Anything else changes the area considerably. SVA access, no letters and signs. It is completely unacceptable that a separate application has been submitted using SVA as site access without facility to inform / object. Building phase implies 5 lorries per hour entering SVA and exit Brierley Paddocks. Elderly residents already suffer respiratory conditions. Their property is just a few metres from the proposed road, creates change of environment impacting the enjoyment of their property and their health. Police were finally consulted but did not speak to residents. That is no balance between community and development. Feathering, urban/rural is used as the reason for high density. However, that is not consistent in the reason irrelevant. These same standards allow car headlights to beam directly into rear gardens. The developer has bought a parcel of land on the east edge, making feathering irrelevant. A formal complaint was made asking the report to be withdrawn due to inaccuracy, misleading, and conveniently misses important details in preference to irrelevant. Guidance for affordable housing states groups of 15, but instead, quote, many paragraphs repeating detail about doctor surgery and commercial units, knowing very well these are vacant building plots. Call-in was for reasons of layout and access. The revised layout does not address key objections made by residents stated by the developer on the portal 26th of June. Councillor's duty is to vote. Abstaining is against the code of conduct and unfair to the residents you represent. Councillors should err on the side of caution regarding report detail. There are still numerous objections unresolved, impacting the enjoyment of property and health. The answer is not to push these away as conditions, but to ensure the whole plan is acceptable from the start. There is no balance between the community and this development. There is a very small gift of money in it for the community, otherwise it takes away rights to enjoy what they already have. I compel the council to reject this application and request it is resubmitted with accuracy and due consideration to law and community. And that's the end of the submission, Chairman.
Thank you, Richard. I now call on Richard Winsborough of City and Country to address. Again, you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm Richard Winsborough and I head up the planning team at City and Country. It will not surprise you at all to hear that I fully endorse the officer's report as well as the conclusions. I trust you received my letter outlining a few salient points, including those raised by Mr. Stafford this evening that I thought would be useful for you to understand ahead of your deliberations. As a result, I won't be going through those specific points again. Instead, I'd just like to say that I believe, and I think officers that certainly concur, that we've produced a layout that is compliant with the draft allocation, the outline consent, CBC policy and guidance, and ultimately this will be a high quality and appropriate development for the site. As envisaged at the outline stage, the layout is dominated by open space, which at 3.1 hectares is well in excess of policy requirement. The houses are well designed to reflect the Essex vernacular, and the broad mix means that all levels of entry into the housing market are covered. The 30% social housing reflects the mix provided to us by your housing officer, which means this site will help tackle head-on identified local need. As with the outline, these proposals have been subject to rigorous consultation and assessment from your officers, and following this, there are no technical objections to the scheme from those consultees. We've engaged with the immediate neighbours, we've listened and responded where we could with changes to the layout, or we've agreed to continue neighbourly discussions if matters fall outside the planning arena. Whilst it's not been possible to appease all local concerns, I hope that our communication to date goes some way to demonstrate our commitment to positively contributing to the future of West Mersea. Now, if I may, I'd like to pick up on one particular point that's been raised this evening, which is the location of the social housing. We do have a planning obligation, but more importantly, a social duty to provide social housing on this site. We are providing the mix that the council has requested, as I mentioned. The identified locations are best suited for these house types, regardless of their tenure, as supported by your planning officer, urban design officer, and the secure by design officer who I spoke to myself. We have a vested interest in ensuring the social housing is a success, and we will be working with a registered provider that we're confident will proactively manage the houses and their tenants for the benefit of not only our own residents, but existing residents as well. Social housing should be seen as a way of actively encouraging a cohesive community rather than something to be concerned about. We've actually submitted details in terms of the pre-application conditions because we're keen to start on site as soon as we can, clearly subject to your approval this evening. The idea is that we'd be on site within a matter of months to help start delivering private and social houses. I therefore ask respectfully that you support your officers and their recommendation for approval. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Winsborough. I now call on Councillor Moore, please.
Good evening, Chair and panel. Thank you for this opportunity to voice some of my concerns regarding the application. While welcoming the planting belt now included in the plans, I think there is need for more screening. A 6-foot close boarded fencing all along the western boundary as far south as the Seaview Avenue entrance would protect the existing households from headlight glare at night. There is at least one cul-de-sac facing directly into the back windows of a Seaview property. So I would think that a fence would go a long way to improving the sense of security of the residents and their privacy. I would like to know if the distance between 3 Farthings Chase and the nearest property proposed is actually sufficient. It does seem to be quite close. I know it's a bit difficult when some properties are facing one way and some facing another, but on the plan it looks as if it's pretty close to 3 Farthings Chase. When this development was first mooted, Mersea residents cautiously welcomed the hope that it would provide homes for our own young families who find it too expensive to buy or rent on the island where they grew up. Some of the homes should be reserved for local families, either to rent or buy. Of the 30 affordable, at least 10 should be reserved for locals. I am concerned about the effect of the construction traffic on the residents of Seaview Avenue. Is it really necessary to maintain the one-way system within the site? When construction is finished, will the Seaview entrance be returned to footpath status, or will it remain a roadway capable of taking motor traffic, thereby maintaining a sword of Damocles over the Seaview residents? One further thing, it has been suggested that the roads on the estate are not wide enough for emergency vehicles. Can I be reassured that this is not true? Thank you.
Thank you. I now call on Councillor Jowers, please.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Moore apparently has read my mind in many ways. I called this in because I think there are some major problems. The first one, of course, is the 1,400 objections to this, and as per usual, what I say is that residents haven't had a chance to comment on it. So I listened with interest in that we've had discussions with officers. Yes, of course you would have. City country would have had that, but I don't think there's been enough consultation with local people. The stable doors open, the horses bolted in terms of the initial planning, the outline planning. But I really, really think there's a great lack of consultation with local residents, local inhabitants. I'll go through some of them. Other speakers have covered them. Agreed, we have to have 30% affordable. In Mr. Ryan's report, he mentions how it's graded down from the urban edge. Yeah, you know, why would it not be graded on comparable properties? Why could there not be more pepper potting? Why do we have to have the rather obtrusive blocks of affordable housing in that specific place? I think there could be a little bit more initiative shown, a little bit more sort of pepper potting, I believe was the word. And equally, farthing chase, I think not enough has been made of this, that if this is not made extremely secure, it will be a rat run. And by being secure, not just some planting that's going to take maybe 5-10 years before it becomes impenetrable. At the very least, this needs a pretty hefty 6-foot close-bordered fence, 2-metre close-bordered fence. I'd prefer to see a brick exit on there. And of course, the points made about screening as you go down Seaview Avenue. I went to one house, had a look, and where it's situated, the road into one of the cul-de-sacs, any cars coming down it, the headlights would shine straight into the house in front of it. And I don't think it's reasonable that residents who've already got the aggravation of site traffic and God knows what the building going on, why should they have to pay to protect their own amenity? And actually, it's not a major thing. You know, I don't think it'll be enormously successful. I also think, and this is going to upset one side of any argument, is I honestly don't think the East Road exit is suitable. And when this was put in initially, it actually was going to be for emergency vehicles and pedestrian access. And that kind of makes sense because the bus stop on East Road is pretty close to it. You're taking potentially 200 cars out of development straight in front of a junction, and there's a crossroads, a 4-way crossroads, which is also going to be used by an enormous, it still is, it already is used by an enormous amount of other traffic. Slightly contrary to what Councillor Moore said, it'd be interesting to see whether one way in and one way out, whichever way you do it, would actually reduce the traffic by 50% on both. Now, I don't think that's ever been looked at. He could also, I think Councillor Wood mentioned it, is that it's pretty certain that the surgery is just a no start. I mean, you know, there's already another surgery being offered on another development. This surgery, the site would have had to be bought. I would like to know, secure, whatever the intention may be for that or for the commercial industrial space, is that the community of Mersea gets some benefit. And on that basis, I really do think, as Councillor Moore said, where is the allocation for Mersea residents? We're taking the pain, but where is any form of allocation? You know, years ago when I was on West Mersea Town Council, we could allocate locally. We had our own book and we could allocate. But I come back to the Brierley entrance and exit. Land Registry says it belongs to the owners of the house in Brierley. There may well have been reservations on it, but just go and have a look. It's just the site plays, the vision. I'm surprised, and I'm going against one of my authorities, is County Council. I'm surprised the County Council said that it was suitable. Whereas the site plays at the top of Seaview were actually improved when the Seaview Caravan Park put in an application some 25 years ago. So I think there could be a better integration of social housing. I think the statement of community involvement, well, COVID pandemic has stopped that. It's also stopped a very good link up with Stop 350, local residents and Mersea Town Council. So my view is I think it should be turned down, or I keep saying deferred. Last time I tried to defer something, all of a sudden it popped up again. I don't think there has been enough debate. I'll give City and County some credit in that they have moved the allocation of housing outwards a bit. I think with how much is it, 3.1 hectares of amenity land, they could actually have done a bit more than that. And I think also that they really do need to address this issue of shielding of the existing Seaview Avenue properties. So on that basis, you know, I think the crucial thing is another meeting with the developers and possibly without Colchester Borough Council officers. It's the sort of thing where, you know, they're very close. I think everyone is quite close to a solution. But at the moment, there's a lot of bitterness, a lot of angst, a lot of feeling they've not been consulted, which they would have been. And of course, there's this issue of, are we giving the weight to the emerging local plan? We're not actually giving very much weight to the old local plan. And of course, were the local plan to have gone ahead, all those 1,400 objections would have been scrutinised by an inspector.
Chairman, that's time.
Okay, and that's enough, I think. So I'd urge you, no, not good enough.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jowers. Councillor Davidson, please.
Chairman, Councillor Davidson has left us. His internet connection has gone down, so I'm afraid he's unable to join us. Sends his apologies.
Councillor Jowers, would I be right to assume that what you and Councillor Moore have said would not be very different to what Councillor Davidson would say?
You know, I think that would probably be a reasonable assumption, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jowers. No. Right. Thank you very much, everybody. If all public speakers and visiting councillors will be so good as to leave the meeting, you will be able to follow the proceedings on the council's YouTube channel, please. Councillor Cope, please. Right, I think that's simply officers and committee members. Good. Right, the first item on the agenda is in fact two items. One is a substantive planning application and the other one is a listed building consent for the old site of Colchester Hospital, or Essex County Hospital more accurately. The presenting, I think you've read the text of what it's about. The presenting officer is James Ryan. James, if you'd be good enough to present the application, please.
Chair, just before we start, I noticed Councillor Pearson has his hand raised. I'm not sure if that's, he wants to say something or whether that's just.
Thank you, Mr. Clifford. Chair, I'm just anxious that the sound quality is not particularly good this evening. I'm wondering, I think that we do a disservice to those of us who are making contributions if we can't hear fully. I'm just wondering whether if a brief pause while we all log off and log back in might resolve it, as sometimes happens. Otherwise, I think it's unfair to anybody who's watching, listening, but also to those of us who are participating if we can't fully hear the contributions.
I think I noticed that certainly Councillor Jowers his voice started to break up, and your voice just there was absolutely unrecognisable, shall we say. So, Richard, would that be acceptable for all of us to log off, log back on again? In order to reboot the system?
Chairman, you can, you're welcome to try that if we think that that will improve. Otherwise, you could sometimes, to improve the bandwidth, if we turn some of the cameras off, that can sometimes help. But if you wanted to try the some members logging on and logging off, that might help.
Yeah, are all members affected because it's coming through loud and clear on my reception?
Do you want to, Hayley, do you want to run through a quick auditory test or audio test, please?
Mine's perfect.
Of course, Chair. So, Councillor, in order that I can see you, Councillor Loveland, do you want to just check your audio?
This one seems fine, thank you.
Councillor Chua?
Yes, mine seems fine. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis,
Yeah, perfectly clear, thank you.
Councillor Hazel,
Mine is fine, thank you.
Councillor Barton,
Fine, thank you.
Councillor McLean,
Mine's fine, thank you.
Councillor Oxford.
Mine is also fine, thank you.
Okay, so I think it's Councillor Pearson that's struggling. Are any of the officers having any problems?
Mine's fine, Hayley.
Okay.
Shall we, Chair, just before we start, should we just take a 5-minute adjournment while Councillor Pearson tries to reconnect and see if that improves matters?
Indeed, yes.
That's fine. If it's only mine that's an issue, I'm happy.
We'll try to log on and we'll.
Councillors, you just want to turn your microphones and your videos off for 5 minutes, and we'll just put the adjourned screen up.
Councillor Pearson, can I just check your audio now, please?
Can you hear me, Hayley?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, much better than last time.
Right, members, as they return, could turn their videos back on, please. Right, Chair, I think we're ready to resume.
Ready to go? Thank you. We're all present and correct. Good. Councillor Pearson, all this arose because I understand you wanted to make a point of order, or was it about the quality of the sound?
No, it was purely about the quality of the sound, Chair.
Good.
I thought if others were struggling the way I was, it wouldn't make for a good meeting.
Much better.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, we can now move on. I believe we're at the point where James was about to give us the presentation on the Essex County Hospital site. You have the floor, James.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, members. Right, share my screen. So first item of the day is effectively two items, a full planning application 192828 and the concurrent listed building application 192829, both very similar. So site plan here, Lexden Road, Grey Road, Hospital Road and Oxford Road, and various blocks numbered, plenty more detail of that in a second. So roof drawing, we'll come back to that. This is a street scene elevation for Lexden Road showing the retained buildings here, the new block here, the retained building here. And this is the Hospital Road elevation. New terrace along here. The former entrance being converted into dwellings here. Block that exists on the front retained, and this piece here is actually set back a fair bit. That would be that flank there, you can see. More flats there, listed building in the background. This is the Oxford Road elevation. So the new northwest block proposed here, see the balconies there. Still see the listed building through there. Ghosted in, and the nurses block here retained and converted into flats. Sorry, yeah, into flats. And this is the Grey Road elevation. So flank of the nurses block, access point here, and then the terrace with communal amenity spaces in here, and 3 blocks of townhouses. It's the listed building drawing for the main listed hospital, just showing removal of some of the later additions which were fire escapes. So that's certainly a positive impact on the setting of the listed building. That's the locally listed nurses block. Very fine building, very attractive. Some pictures of that in a minute. This is the to be converted kitchen block, also a very attractive little building in the rear here. So it's in the site plan about there, very central in the site. On the existing northeastern block, with the new building set behind that and to the side. The new proposed northwestern block, sorry, the northeastern block in front of the, with the hospital road elevation here and the existing building retained in there. The northeastern block was through the elevations. Here's just some details of potential kind of brick detailing and a kind of just a snapshot of the architectural approaches being used. The idea is to have lots of punctuation within the flanks, so they're not large and monotonous as they've sometimes been called. They're actually quite attractively detailed. You've got strong window frames, some balconies are inset, some balconies project out, and that provides that variation in the street scene that currently you don't get from the existing block, as I'll show you the photos. Here are some of the, this is one of the terraces with the gabled roofs within the site. You see some brick detailing here. We've got some better images of that in a second. So this kind of shows the approach that's being taken with contrasting bricks, snapped headers to give that kind of softness within the crisp architecture. I'll say a little bit more about the kind of overall design approach in a minute, but I'll go through the drawings. There's another set of drawings. It's the 3-story blocks with flat roofs that will run generally at right angles down Grey Road and then along Hospital Road, almost replicating the footprint in many ways of the nurses block. And that's the kind of materiality that's planned with those. I've got some more images to show you in a minute. This is the GU medical block, which is going to be converted into 4 flats. That sits centrally in the site. Got some images of that in a second. Another elevation drawing showing you down Hospital Road and the what was the former entrance block that will be turned into dwellings. And this is one that's been specially prepared for tonight because it has been requested by members that they wanted to see an overlay of the new and the old. Now or the existing even. So the red line is what sits there as existing. You can see that it's actually quite wide in places. This element is being retained. There was a real push from officers to keep this element because it's we feel it's very attractive and a significant historic asset. You can see the higher elements are actually set back a fair bit. I mean, one thing I will point out, this element here is the water tank, and that is set quite a fair way back. So the new block is taller, there's no doubt about it. It's also a bit wider, but there are reasons for that, which I'll go into in a minute. But this was especially prepared today because it was requested. And I think that the point I really want to make is, although there's been some concern that the new development will obscure the main listed building, you're looking at around 40 metres or just over 39 metres from framing block to framing block. So along the Lexden Road, you'll still get a really good view of the listed building, and it sits up. It's a larger building. It sits up a higher level as well. So it's not going to be fundamentally obscured, we consider. Here's a kind of landscaping master plan. One of the key benefits of this scheme, as has been mentioned before, is the reassignment of what is currently a whole, well, it's currently an archaeological site, but prior to that, and for the recently living memory, it's been a car park for the hospital block and just later hard stand. That's going to be given back over to Central Lawn. So we consider that to be a real significant public benefit and really improves the setting of the main listed block, which is of course this one here. These sluice blocks here, very interesting. Just want to show you this because this is some of the level of detail that the applicants have already looked at. These are some of the significant tree planting that's included within the scheme, and there's potential for quite a bit more when we work this up into a detailed stage. But you can see the kind of communal gardens here, which be a real focal point for the dwellings that sit in this section here. As you can see, the kind of E-shaped nurses block. I think the idea is to kind of replicate the E shape again to give that kind of rhythm in the street scene that you get along Oxford Road and then along Grey Road, to really punctuate that street scene and bring a bit of greenery to it as well behind the wall. This is a parking layout, just demonstrating that the parking is being allocated for the blocks in close to those blocks, and the dwellings will have their own on-site parking. This is the amenity space drawing. So there's areas of private amenity space with balconies and roof terraces, roof terrace on block 5, for example. Shared amenity space, for example, the nurses block will have shared amenity space around here. And the large area of public open space on the front, which is going to be, I think I describe it as semi-public. It's clearly there to be used by the residents. I don't think the applicants want to gate it off to prevent the public using it, but it's closely framed by both the listed building and the 2 blocks either side. So it really is intended for kind of overspill from the amenity areas for the blocks either side to be used by all in the campus feeling to enjoy. So, and this is a rather technical drawing, but it just shows the level of cycle parking that's been negotiated since the application was submitted. So we've got a real good provision of cycle parking throughout the entire site. So let's take us through some photos. Main listed building. I sent around videos, so I think most members will have had a chance to look at those, but I think take some pictures anyway. As you can see, the existing flank here rather blank and does obscure the listed building quite a bit, plus this hard stand is not particularly attractive. It's the best angle I could get of the hospital building with the hoarding currently up. There's one from the other side of Lexden Road with poplars to be retained. This is obviously going to be the retained element, and this is proposed to come down. It's on the front on the Lexden Road elevation. This block here is completely blank. So I think it's been alluded to in some of the public speaking that the new block is not any better. Officers would disagree because this block just doesn't give anything to the street scene. It's effectively an entirely blank elevation, whereas what's proposed will frame Lexden Road really nicely, be a high quality kind of bricked architecture, punctuated by fenestration, and by balconies, some of which project, some which are inset, and we think that enlivens the street scene no end compared to this. It's another image of that. So this is a prominent location. You've got the flues and yeah, not much to offer the street scene really. It's looking down Oxford Road. That's the water tank I told you about. You see the nurses block peeking out there. It's one of the projections from the nurses block that forms the kind of fingers of the E. Really attractive detailing on this building. It's going to make a lovely block of conversion flats, we think. Is the end piece that wraps around Grey Road. It's just one that I took inside the hoarding to see the kind of bay windows on the nurses block. Really attractive as well. That is just inside the existing Oxford Road entrance, showing the northern flank of the nurses block. Rear of the nurses block with the buildings of less merit, all of which will be coming down. This is the kitchen block, which will be fully renovated and converted into 2 dwellings, right in the centre of the site. This is the rear of the main building, main hospital building. This is the GU medical block, which will be converted into the 4 affordable homes. Some of the elements to be removed from there. Kind of formerly staff car parking area. A big pile of spoil that was removed from for the archaeology, and some of the other flat roof buildings to the rear. So the current street elevation on Hospital Road, on the water tank. Hospital Road looking down towards Lexden Road, the existing ramp and steps. That's the original hospital entrance to be retained. Looking back up the steps, and the kind of CAD image of the layout. So this is the showing the roofs, converted buildings here, new buildings here with the heritage asset on the front retained, nurses block, cul-de-sac being served off of Grey Road to the rear. Here's a CAD image showing the existing nurses block with the new block, northwest block, just about visible there. This is the back of Grey Road turning the corner to Hospital Road, showing the kind of change of materials that kind of break up the massing of these buildings. That's the rear of the site, showing the communal areas. So these houses will have roof terraces, they'll have their own private small gardens and a shared communal area. And the idea of the whole site is it will be run and managed by a management company that will be wholly owned by the residents themselves. So they will be able to ensure that's maintained and is an excellent place to live in terms of really trying to generally create a sense of place, which is something that planners talk about a lot. But I think this is a whole urban block that really will create a sense of place, and we think it's a very high design quality. So that's the front, showing main listed building, northwestern block, northeastern block, former entrance, 2 blocks to the rear, nurses block, and the terraces at the back. Right, I'll just go back one, and I will attempt to show you if I go back to that one. If I screen, right, we have the architects have provided a kind of fly through, which I know some of you have seen, but I will show it now. So this will be for illustrative purposes, but it kind of gives you a feel of the site. Starting off at the front, obviously, with the new green apron, very attractive, then kind of flying over the nurses block. See solar panels there on all of the individual dwellings. The design team were very keen on that. We're very keen to respond to the council's climate crisis. So hence the solar panels, and the scheme is really designed to be highly supportive of active travel, be that on foot or by bike. Spinning around to the Lexden Road elevation now. See, there's a stepped access there that we just zoomed past, and there's a question mark style ramped access just past that. So cyclists and those on wheels will be catered for, and we'll have the real the pedestrian priority line. It's the block in the centre there with the four affordable units, the GU medical block, and then central, or to the left of that now, is the kitchen block. Right, I'll stop sharing my screen. So I'd like to, I think you've all read the report and you can see what officers think of the scheme. There are a few points I wanted to make, and then I'll try and respond to some of the questions that were raised by the speakers. First of all, clearly a key issue for many people is the design. This is a scheme that we think is of a really high quality of design. It's been worked through with our in-house urban design team, heritage team, and the project architects for a number of years now. Also, Historic England have been closely involved and have no objection to the scheme now. In terms of both the architectural language is being used by both the blocks and by the terraces. It is some people call it a kind of new London vernacular. I mean, that in effect, it just means it's a kind of rooted, heavy and brick-led vernacular, punctuated by fenestration that really is designed to stand the test of time. It's not contemporary architecture that will look rather dated in 10 to 15 years, where the materials start looking a bit wishy-washy and the windows look out of place. It's a carefully thought through scheme that is really led by brick, and a really good quality stock brick we hope to secure to ensure that it weathers down really well and does stand the test of time. In terms of the kind of campus approach, the idea from both officers and the project architect was to create an area, a kind of, a whole urban block that people, regardless of their architectural background, can clearly read the difference between the different eras, be that the listed building, the locally listed nurses block, the later additions that are still historic heritage assets, for example, the gun block and the kitchen block, but also will be able to read that the new blocks on the frontage and the new terraces to the rear are new additions. We didn't want those to compete with the listed building. We want them to be heavily bricked and of a design quality that would stand on their own 2 feet as buildings, but they should be obvious to all that they are new buildings or of a newer generation. Some of the representations would prefer a kind of a pastiche approach, which would be new blocks that ape more of a maybe Lexden vernacular, kind of Victorian, late Georgian, early Victorian, mid-Victorian, kind of highly detailed slack pitch roofs, and as has happened in some parts of the area. And for sometimes that is appropriate, but we feel that, like in this instance, when you're dealing, it's very rare you get to deal with a full urban block like this, and the architects were very keen to use something that is of its time, but is of a design quality that will stand the test of time, and that's the kind of approach that we feel they've taken. So we wholeheartedly support that. I think as a side note, we strongly believe they are significantly better than the buildings they are replacing, and they will provide an active frontage, framing the listed building in a far more successful way than they currently do on site. I know Councillor Cope mentioned overdevelopment. I mean, to be perfectly honest, this is a scheme that is, hanging in the balance viability-wise. We've had viability appraisals, which have been, open book appraisals that have been available for everyone to see online. And even with the unit numbers on site, there's not a huge amount of money in the scheme. Our viability appraisal, there was a viability appraisal was provided, and then we had that independently appraised. Then a further one came through with more detail, and we also had that independently appraised. And it's there for all to see, but it was the outcome of that was that it's almost surprising that the scheme is being taken on at the moment. There really is not a great deal of money in it, and this was pre-COVID. So they simply need the numbers on site to make this scheme a goer. And we really want to see this scheme brought forward as officers, because we think it's a good one. We think it is just about deliverable, and it has significant public benefits of being the open space at the front, and the improvements to the setting of the listed building. It will, in short, it will secure this. The listed building, the local listed building, and the other heritage assets will secure their beneficial use for years to come. So while we accept there's a significant amount of development on site, and there's a little bit more development on site than was on the original public consultation, which I attended myself, we don't feel that has negatively impacted the scheme, and it has ultimately, the applicants did listen to those, to a lot of the comments from the public, and one of the greatest fears was, why is there no affordable housing? So they are now providing 4 affordable units within the gun block. So that is one of the significant changes they made from the public consultation, because they heard the weight of the public opinion on that matter. It's obviously not 20% as we prefer, but it's been fully justified by a viability appraisal. So we think that it should be accepted as better than nothing, to be perfectly honest. So I think that's all I've got to say at the moment. Any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them. Thank you very much.
Chairman, you're muted.
I do beg your pardon.
Didn't hear any of that.
I will start all over again. Thank you very much, James. I will now invite committee members to ask questions or make comments in alphabetical order. Councillor Barton, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Start with the positives. I'm really pleased that Historic England have been actively involved and now support the application. That's very promising. It is a very historical site, so in my opinion, their support is crucial. And I'm pleased to see that we're retaining the main building, which is listed, and also the former nurses' home, which is locally listed. So of particular importance to local residents. So those are going to be retained and renovated. So that's all very good news, very positive. On the downside, it's still disappointing that there are only 4 affordable homes. And I'm just wondering whether that's weighted against the costs involved with renovating listed buildings. I presume that's quite an expensive business, so presumably you have to balance what money's available and whether that is one of the reasons. So that was one question. Second part, going back to the blocks, which I mentioned before, facing Lexden Road. Thank you very much indeed, James, for doing that slide. That's really useful because it does show the difference in height between what's there at the moment and what will be there. Looking at the streetscape, you've answered some of the questions. It's fairly well set back, but we've seen now the landscaping that will be in front of the block, which looks okay to me. Final question though, looking at the streets here, I couldn't quite see from the slide, is the centre, the original hospital, is it taller than the blocks that will be fronting Lexden Road? Because it looks it on your slide and then there's a bit more of a balance to the whole thing. That was it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chua, please.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to say that I like the large public open space that looked out into Lexden Road. I'm pleased that it's not concrete, which would make the development look really dull. The second part of it is that I'm also pleased that the 4 affordable units are placed within the development itself and not sort of put into one corner out of the way. But I also wish to make a request, if that's possible. Is it possible to have a display board highlighting the history of the site? Because this former hospital is a listed hospital building. Now, okay, what is being developed is for the new generation, but we mustn't forget that this building has stood the test of time serving the residents of Colchester. So my request is the developer prepared to do a display board so that we have also the memories of what this place has served. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, James, what I'll do is I'll take councillors' comments in batches of 3 and ask you to come back. Yeah. Councillor Hazel, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have a list of questions. First one is the grassed area in the front. Will children actually be allowed to play on that? Will they be able to, for example, have some ball games? That might be more difficult, but will they be able to play on it? The next one are the window types. Are they wood, plastic, aluminium? Size of the balconies and size of the roof terrace. Are these usable spaces? And will the roof gardens or the roof terraces be able to be gardens? You know, will they be able to, residents be able to make a garden up there, which you often see in a lot of urban landscapes these days, where they're encouraging greenery on these balconies and roofs. I'm also a little concerned about the size of the flats, to make sure that they are actually livable sizes, that they'll be fit for purpose, their room sizes will be suitable. And I'm sure I did read it, but I can't remember it, the colour of the bricks to be used. And I'm almost there. I was a bit concerned, the contaminated land item capping. Now, I assume that to mean that the contamination is buried and something's put on the top. And I would be concerned about that. I would like all of that contamination removed, because contamination has a habit of rising to the surface. So I comments on that, please, James. And then the £14,400 earmarked for a museum cabinet, should it be required. Where will that money go if the cabinet isn't required? That's all I have for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hazel. James, would you care to deal with those questions first, please?
Yes, thank you very much, of course. Councillor Barton asked about provision of 4 affordable units. Is that because of the viability? Absolutely. The listed building is the renovation and conversion of listed buildings up to a really high quality standard is very, very expensive, much more expensive than simply building new buildings. Obviously not all the unknowns are yet known in terms of the conversion of the building. Having been through it myself, it's not in a fantastic condition, having been used as an institutional building for many years. And that has been worked into the expenses, so that is one of the reasons. Absolutely, it's just significantly more expensive to convert listed buildings, and then to convert the other heritage assets as well. So the locally listed nurses block is going to be done with significant sensitivity, as is the gun block and the kitchen block, plus the former entrance on Hospital Road and the section of heritage asset on Lexden Road. In terms of the windows, yes, the listed building. Let me just take you back to the that drawing. That will show you the just catching up. That one.
Yeah, that's
yes,
the one.
I mean, it's I mean, when you go on site, one of the things that is immediately apparent is that it just sits at a significantly high. The whole listed building is higher than the main Lexden Road walkway by quite a margin. So it will still sit, and it will still have that kind of prominence in the street scene, we believe. So there you go. And if you just have a look where I've got my cursor here, that bit of roof is one of the returning hipped roofs of the nurses blocks. That's also torn up. So roofs of the main listed hospital block and nurses block there.
Thank you.
No problem. In terms of the display board, that sounds like a very good idea, and I'm sure we can get the applicants to put something on site to that effect. That would be an excellent way of, and that will just create this additional sense of place and the legibility of the history of the area. So that's something officers would certainly support, and we will ensure that happens, no problem. I'm sure they'll have no problem doing that either. So can children play on the green area? Absolutely. I mean, it is an area of open space. I think the question is whether that will be the children of residents or whether that will be the children of the general public. And it will be publicly open, but I think it's one of those kind of spaces that will be inherently overlooked by the 3 blocks that are closest to it, and therefore it's the kind of space that I think will be generally used by residents, to be perfectly honest. But there's no intention to have no ball game signs or a kind of pristine lawn that no one can sit on. The idea is that is usable open space, and that is one of the real key benefit. I mean, I think in terms of the public benefit is just the visual benefit that will give, and not having a big car park, frankly. It's just going to be just so much more pleasant having a nice green landscape space. But it's great that it forms 2 purposes, and that it will provide some play space on site, and just nice sitting out area should one of the residents of the flats wish to get outside. Window types, I mean, you'll see there's a raft of conditions at the end. We are dealing with all of those kind of matters in significant detail by condition. we will try and secure the best quality materials throughout the scheme. On the listed building, the idea is to renovate as many of the windows as is possible. A lot of them are, unfortunately, in a very, very bad condition. So quite how many of those we'll actually be able to retain as opposed to replace with timber sashes, I don't know, but that will be dealt with by condition that you'll see at the end of the report. Yeah, I mean, the room sizes are generous. These are not pokey flats. They are they're very nice, to be perfectly honest. For example, the conversion of the listed building involves using the sluice blocks, which are pointed out, which are those kind of unusual blocks on the ends of the wings that stick out as a kind of as the kitchen areas, for example. So they'll have like three aspects basically, and will be absolutely fantastic. There's yeah, they're all of the I've got the space size in front of me, and they're all very generous. Brick types, again, that's something that we look to deal with. It's very, very important. I wholeheartedly agree. The quality, we're going to look for a quality stock brick. Again, we're going to do that by condition, because bricks are, by their very nature, produced in cycles, and you can get hold of some at some time, and you can get hold of others at other times. And sometimes you can't get hold of any, depending on what the construction industry is doing. So we tend to do that by condition, but we'll get a we may get a sample panel pulled together to make sure that they're absolutely complementary, where they need to complement the listed buildings, and where they contrast. I think I showed you that drawing where there was a difference on some of the terraces to kind of highlight that brick materiality. We want to make sure there's a nice clear contrast, but still warm and homely and appropriate for the Grey Road and Hospital Road elevations. Contaminated land. This is another thing that we intend to do by condition. You'll have seen that big pile of spoil in the photo. That was taken out for the archaeology, and that has been decontaminated. So there are various methods of doing it. Our in-house contaminated land officer, Mary Rickard, has asked for a set of conditions, and she's happy that the rest of that can do. I mean, it's going to take some serious investigation. It's not going to be a simple condition to discharge, but applicants are absolutely happy to deal with that via condition through our own in-house team, and they'll be doing that as soon as they can, basically. But I mean, that is a phased condition they've asked for, because clearly some of the buildings have to come down before they can start making investigation, and some of the buildings need careful removal when they are being taken down. So that'll all be guided by our own in-house team. I think that's it for those questions.
The roof terraces.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yes. I mean, there is no reason. I mean, the roof terraces are designed to be used as gardens. Absolutely. So although they won't be planted out, raised bed kind of thing. There's lots of products on the market that mean you can bring a significant amount of planting to those roof terraces, and that's absolutely encouraged. The more planting, the better in terms of everyone's well-being and biodiversity. So that's something we'd absolutely encourage, and it's something we don't usually condition the use of private people's absolute private amenity spaces, because it's kind of up to them. But it's certainly something that will be encouraged, and I think it's one of those things that hopefully will happen organically. As people realise that the installation of small trees, shrubbery, and planting beds is a really good idea.
Is that all, Councillor Hazel?
The last one was just the 14,400 for the museum.
Well, the simple matter is it'll be part of the legal agreement. If they don't need it, it won't be requested. It's as simple as that. It will not be provided. I mean, this is a site with significant archaeological interest, and it's highly likely in this instance to actually be needed. But if that ends up not being the case, again, we'll be guided by our own in-house archaeologist. And if he considers there's nothing, everything that has been found needs to remain in situ, for example, and be covered over eventually, that will be the steer we take. So we take our steer from him, basically. So it's just to make sure that we have a method of displaying that should there be some interesting finds, because there have been in the past.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think that the first public speaker tonight made an important point, which is that the Lexden Road is one of the most important access routes into the town centre. And this development will act as a landmark, really. And I think it's something that we should be concerned about, its design and how it's going to be developed. And we need to be proud of it. So the materials that they use and the design of the building are important. And I think a lot of points have been made already on this matter. I think what we have to ask ourselves is, does the impact of the scheme on the amenities and the conservation area and heritage assets, etc., are materially harmful to the adjacent properties? Well, when you look at the presentation we've had and the buildings adjoining the property in Oxford Road and Hospital Road, they're not particularly inspiring at the moment, although they were. There's some flat roof blocks there. So I'm not a great advocate of flat roof buildings because they do tend to look like a block, but what they're replaced in was not dissimilar in certain aspects. So I think the question of overdevelopment and design, I think is somewhat displaced by the fact that English Heritage have been supportive of this application and have been involved in the involvement of this particular site as well. So that gives me a certain amount of encouragement. I think we also have to take note that the scheme will in fact deliver the conservation and the reuse of a series of heritage assets that are currently at risk because they are going to be decaying if remaining unoccupied. So these are the sort of questions that I've asked myself on this matter. And overall, I think it looks like a good development. I am disappointed about the lack of affordable housing, as I invariably am, because we don't seem ever to reach our targets. But I do understand that it's a fairly unique site in that being a hospital site, there is a fair amount of decontamination to take place. And also the restoration of historic buildings, etc., is more expensive than the norm. So overall, I don't have a strong adversity to the actual site, and I'm leaning towards acceptance. So my comments so far, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. Councillor Loveland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just a few things really. I'm not against the actual project as it is. I just wish it could be a bit more in keeping with their surrounding areas. Councillor Jarvis just mentioned a lot of things that I've got written down. I don't like flat roofs. I think we could do better in design. I think, you know, as Councillor Jarvis said, this is a main route into town. And I just feel that we could be, you know, more appreciative of the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McLean, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to know if the rear entrance on Grays Road is going to be opposite the chiropractor, or is it actually shining into somebody's house, because there's going to be an awful lot of traffic going through that one use of gateway. The other item I'm a bit concerned about is the brickwork which Ryan spoke about, make it look a little bit different with the L shape. Do we have an example around Colchester which we've approved before? Because the only brickwork I know of which I was on the committee when we approved it was at the refuge house on London Road, opposite the Little Aldi or whatever, you know, just up from there. And I wouldn't say it's particularly nice, and I just wonder if it's going to be similar to that, because it's very high and very imposing and doesn't look anything special. So, you know, we've just got to compare with what we've got in the surrounding area and what we can actually see from previous use. The other item I have is, we talk about play activities for everybody on the premises. Are there any designated play areas for younger children? I think if we've got a premises with the play area right next to a main road going to Colchester, we should have some gated play area for the younger children, because, you know, it is a very busy place, and if there's going to be a lot of people there, because we don't know if it's public open space for everybody to use, you know, we're saying, or maybe not everybody, but if it's public open space, it could be used by anybody. So could we not give that some thought, that the developer could actually put some specifics there for younger children? The roof line, would that be noticeable from the ground, the street level, or is that just purely from looking across at a certain height? Because we talk about seeing the older buildings over above the square boxes. I just wondered if that's going to have a real effect to the public as they're walking down the street, or if it will just be noticeable from opposite in other houses. So I'd just like an answer on some of those, and that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McLean. James, would you like to answer, please?
Yes, thanks very much. I mean, I think I concur with what Councillor Jarvis said. I mean, and as far as Councillor Lovelace says, I mean, ultimately, your design is inherently subjective, and that's kind of why we're at committee, because you know, officers consider this to be acceptable, but some of the members of the public don't. So that's a call we have to make. In terms of the roof line, the drawing that I showed, that is taken head on. So no, I mean, I think as I kind of suggested before, you won't get that kind of view, but you don't get that kind of view now. You sit at a much lower level, and even the existing blocks, which are a bit smaller, effectively obscure your view for the portion of the frontage that they sit across. So you'll see it in the kind of 39 and a bit meters of gap, basically. You'll get glimpses of it through from Oxford Road still, and you'll see, you know, the setting of the nurses block is not actually impacted upon from the public domain. The access is on, you know, the access to Hospital Court is onto Grey Road. I mean, that's been tracked and has been agreed with the Highway Authority. It's a scheme for members to consider in that respect. You're going to have some vehicle movements in and out of there, but what officers have really tried to do is to create a place where you don't necessarily need to drive the whole time. If you do have a car, you can leave it in your parking space or in your garage, and you can easily access town by taking the pedestrian desire line straight across the site, down the question mark ramp, or down the steps, and straight into town. So we think that this is while there's concern about some of the traffic movements this may or may not generate, officers consider that. Well, I mean, from a highway point of view, the Highway Authority are happy. From an impact on amenity point of view, we don't consider it to be materially harmful to the point that it would warrant refusal on that basis, because we don't think that the accesses are going to be as significantly used as some accesses out in the countryside, for example, because you've got excellent public transport links, lots of cycle storage as well as your parking, vehicle parking, and it is near to the most of the amenities that Colchester Town Centre offers. So that's one of the reasons we really support the scheme in that respect. Officers wouldn't like to encourage the installation of play equipment in the green wedge at the green kind of apron at the front, purely because that would, I think that would have quite a dominant effect on the setting of the listed building. There's a significant financial contribution, as you'll see in the committee papers, towards the upkeep of Castle Park. This is, you get quite a few urban blocks these days when looking at prior notification conversions from offices, to flats where there's no private amenity space required whatsoever. So we consider this to be quite generous in terms of its size, and we wouldn't encourage a play area because of the firstly the proximity to the existing block that will be converted to flats, and the two blocks either side, and just simply in terms of setting of listed building issues, it would put another structure right in the middle of the scheme, and that's something we'd rather avoid, to be perfectly honest. I think I addressed the roof line. I think that was it. Please come back to me if I missed anything.
Thank you, James. Councillor Oxford, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Most of what I said wanted to say has already been said, so I'd like to go along and put a motion forward that we accept the officer's recommendation, please, Chair.
Chair, you're on
Chairman,
mute.
you're muted.
I do apologise. Do I have a seconder for that, please?
Seconded with the proviso of the additional condition that Councillor Moore was suggesting.
Indeed, yes, the display board, absolutely. All right, so we have a motion on the table. Councillor Pearson, do you have any questions or comments, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm very pleased to see the solar panels built into the design of the properties. I had a question about the number of electric charging points, because there's something in the body that refers to just 6, and then I think in the conditions it refers to 1 for each property where there is a car park. So I'd just like clarification on that, please. I think in terms of vehicular access to the site, the restrictions of the number of parking spaces mean that the incoming and outgoings are likely to be quite limited, so I'm not overly concerned about that. I share some of the concerns that have already been expressed about the limited number of affordable housing, but I've heard what Mr. Ryan has had to say about the viability issues. I think it's a little bit of a shame that there isn't some inbuilt biodiversity to the flat roofs on the new build, but I appreciate that hopefully residents may take that on board themselves and do something. I think in terms of design, I mean, that site has been mostly tarmacked for the 4 decades that I have lived in Colchester. I take on board the comments about the listed parts of the site, and as has already been commented on, the fact that English heritage are on board is very positive. But I think when it comes to design, we have to accept that one person's Picasso is another person's Da Vinci. You know, everyone has a different view about what design looks like. And the suggested buildings here are not going to be any worse than the 60s/70s carbuncles that already exist on this site. So all in all, I think the design that's in front of us and the suggested buildings that are in front of us is a very good use of that site that needs to be well used. I'm not concerned about the impact it will have on visitors to the town. I think once this is up and fully occupied, any visitors to the town will see this as a positive, not a negative.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. I think for my own part, I agree with everything, more or less everything that's been said, actually. It is good that historic buildings are being preserved and renovated. Whilst I do have some reservations about the design, as Councillor Pearson rightly said, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and it's a matter of personal taste. And I do think that, having looked at the presentation and the way that the brickwork has been displayed, I think that it would ameliorate the some of the more brutal effects of that particular design. So, you know, personally, I think, to cut a long story short, I will certainly support it, subject to the condition suggested by Councillor Moore. Are there any other conditions that members would like to make at all before? I don't think that there's any need for either James to come back, or indeed actually Simon. I think we can move straight to the vote.
Chair,
please.
Could I just ask Mr. Ryan to clarify my question about the electronic charging points?
I do beg your pardon, please. Yeah.
Yes, of course. We are going to try and get as many as we possibly can. It's complicated in terms of laying the ducting when we are really also desperately trying to get in as much planting as we can. And it's something that they have thought about throughout the scheme, and hence why we've got a relatively open-ended condition where it's probably not necessary in the terraces where they've got garages where you'll be able to plug your car in within the garage, but we definitely want some within the visitor parking spaces and the parking spaces that are outside, particularly for the residents of flats where without on-site EV charging, you will struggle to get it unless you go elsewhere. So we're just going to try and take the most pragmatic solution we possibly can and get as many in as we can without having too much of a detrimental impact on landscaping, tree planting, and the actual parking spaces themselves. So we're going to do our best.
If I could just come back very quickly, Chair, I'm just conscious of the fact that sometime in the next decade to decade and a half, we will all have to go electric. So it's essential now that any new build is designed to be future-proof.
Totally agree. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any further comments, observations to make? If not, I will.
Councillor McLean's indicating, Chairman.
I do beg your pardon, sorry.
Thank you. I've had a raised hand. I've been waving, but never mind. If this project is going to be taking so much money away, and they need more, why are we putting Parks and Recreation at 320,000 to Castle Park? Why can't they use it on site? I mean, if we're trying to make this really up and coming and something really special, can they not use it? Does it have to go to Castle Park?
Can I come back on that? Thank you. The idea is to facilitate the some off-site, because ultimately there's not a great deal of on-site public open space. The feeling from our Parks and Rec team was that they would prefer to have the money and put the money into the maintenance, the ever ongoing maintenance of Castle Park, which is obviously an expensive park area to maintain. Are you saying that you would rather the money spent on the site itself?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that would effectively take money away from Castle Park, however, if we were to do that. I mean, as I said before, I don't think we support a significant play space.
I mean, we take money from different areas. I mean, Stanway put, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands over to North Colchester. That was taken away from Stanway. We're not getting our community centre. So why can't we keep some of the money here if it's going to be detrimental to what we're going to provide for the public that are actually going to be living on this site, and they are short of space and amenity facilities? Should we not be making the site so good that they don't sort of impact on the Castle Park, because there's going to be an awful lot of people using Castle Park? So can we not, could you just give them some of it? That's all I was asking.
Simon, would you like to comment on this one?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, of course I would. If I can possibly clarify for Councillor McLean, the community centre for Stanway is going ahead on the Western Bypass. Indeed, we have an ongoing application for the provision of that. So just to set the record straight on the Stanway issue. With regard to Castle Park, I think the point that James is making is that this development will generate increased users of that facility, and therefore we need to make sure that the capacity of that park is effectively increased incrementally to take account of the growth of town centre residents within central Colchester, and consequently we do need to fund that. And in terms of the SIL regulations, funding that improved capacity is actually going beyond maintenance. I think I'd like to sort of slightly alter what James has said. It's not really about maintaining Castle Park, it's about improving the capacity of Castle Park, so that as more and more residents hopefully move into the town centre to take account of its many and wonderful facilities, that we can actually make sure that we're making provision for those residents to recreate locally, to have access to adequate and appropriate and well-maintained public open space. And that's why we need to fund improvements to Castle Park. Not just about maintenance, it's about improving it and continuing to increase the capacity of that facility. Hopefully that helps, Chair.
Councillor McLean, do you wish to come back?
We do have hilly fields opposite, just down the road from this site as well. Is that I haven't seen anything going there. Is there anything going there, or is it all just for the central Colchester?
It has been requested for Castle Park, but
Just
we could always
fine.
get a cascade into the.
Fine, doesn't matter. That's fine. I was just asking. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Barton, please. Did you want to say something now?
No.
Fine. If there are no further comments or observations, I can't see anybody waving their hand. Oh, Councillor
Chairman, Councillor Pearson had his hand raised.
Did he? All right then. All right. Well, if I could take Councillor Hazel first, then Councillor Pearson, please.
Just an addition to Councillor Chewer's request for a notice board. What about a blue plaque on the main building itself, the original building? But I suspect this is for the Civic Society, should they so wish to take it up. But a blue plaque would be suitable, and the notice board would be marvellous.
Thank you. Councillor Pearson, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah, just very quickly in response to Councillor McLean, I think we have to be cautious about setting any precedents by what should I say, by giving permission for a developer to step down from its obligations to the wider community. So I think it's important that we maintain that contribution to Castle Park.
Thank you. James, would you like to answer Councillor Hazel's query, please? If you could unmute yourself.
Sorry. To be perfectly honest, I think that we would usually deal with matters like a blue plaque under a separate, but assuming that will go on the listed building application, listed building itself, that really would require a specific listed building consent application, I think. So it's certainly something that we can look at, but I don't think we want to condition the provision of one, because it would require further it's not development, it'd be a intervention into the listed building that would potentially require listed building consent in its own right. So it's something that the applicants may, having heard it, what we could do is we could put an informative on suggesting that the previous use is documented in a manner like that, and the applicants can think of a creative way to do that, if that helps.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, so we have a motion on the table, proposed by Councillor Oxford, seconded by Councillor Pearson, that subject to the one condition regarding a display board, that we accept the officer's recommendation for the substantive planning application. Richard, if you were good enough to read out the school roll, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I will call out each councillor's name, and if they could indicate whether they're voting for, against or abstaining. Councillor Barton?
For.
For. Councillor Chewer?
For.
Councillor Hazel?
I can't find any planning reasons to refuse, and parts of it is very good, and I'm not wholly happy with some of the design, but for.
Councillor Jarvis?
For.
Councillor Liddy?
For.
Councillor Loveland?
For.
Councillor McLean?
For.
Councillor Oxford?
For.
Councillor Pearson?
For.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. Now, if we move on to the almost identical one of the listed building consent, could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Oxford and Councillor McLean. Right, if you would be good enough to repeat the process, Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Barton?
For.
Councillor Chewer?
For.
Councillor Hazel?
For.
Councillor Jarvis?
For.
Councillor Liddy?
For.
Councillor Loveland.
For.
Councillor McLean.
For.
Councillor Oxford.
For.
And Councillor Pearson.
For.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. So both applications are passed unanimously. It is 5 to 8. I propose, unless members vehemently object, to continue, as we did have an early break anyway. I now propose we move on to the item concerning Brierley Paddocks. I don't see any objections to that. So, James, if you'd be good enough to take that one away, please.
Of course. Right, I'll just share my screen again.
Chair, Councillor Hazel's got her hand up.
Oh, I do beg your pardon. Councillor Hazel, please.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I do think another 5 or 10 minute break now would be quite useful. Our break before was very short, but obviously take it on majority.
I would concur with Councillor Hazel, Chair. It's a long time to be staring at the screen.
All right, then, if we have if we return at 8:05, is that fine?
That's good.
Prompt.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, then. Right, stand down, James.
Thanks. And if members could turn their videos and mute their microphones, please. Hello. What, in terms of addressing the meeting now? No. Well, I mean, no. They're on adjournment, but it wouldn't be appropriate for you to speak again. Well, what I suggest you do, Mr. Mayor, is that you sleep on it. I don't think that your comments were.
I was here at 5 past prompt, Chair.
Well, I see. I'm here, but how do I get on? Oh,
You're here, Councillor Barton.
I am.
Hello, we're all back again. Good. Are we sitting comfortably?
Councillor McLean has disappeared below her screen, Chair.
Do you have an issue with it? We're only on YouTube, nothing
I'd
else.
love to be able to see you, Jackie.
She's hiding a gin and tonic.
Now. James, if you'd be good enough to present the application for Brierley Paddocks, please.
Of course, with pleasure. I'll just share my screen again. Whiz through the previous slides. Sorry about that, but
say a fond farewell.
Right. So this is the reserve matters application for land at Brierley Paddocks. You'll remember the members granted outline consent for 101 dwellings and the demolition of 1 dwelling in earlier this year. That was reference 192136. At that time, the access and the principle were approved, and the layout, landscaping, appearance and scale were reserved for future consideration, and this application are those reserved matters. That's just to remind ourselves. Site area, that's the Seaview Avenue dwelling that is to be demolished. This is the Brierley Paddocks existing access, the gravel drive, which you've seen. This is Farthing's Chase, which was referred to in some of the representations. Just take you through some of the elevations. There is a commercial building and a surgery. This is the surgery building. See a really attractive single-story quasi-vernacular building there with some little detailing flourishes and around the front door. This is the commercial building, which we'll be able to see on the layout plan in a minute. Show you through some of the house types. They are, I haven't got all of them here, and I haven't got all of the floor plans. If there's anything you particularly want to see, let me know. But they are all generally either 2-story or 1.5-story vernacular style buildings, kind of in accordance with the Essex Design Guide, really quite attractive. This is one of the affordable housing apartment blocks. You see clearly designed to appear as 2-story dwellings. This is, just want to show you this floor plan because this is the Part M4 Cap 32B dwelling, which is a ground floor apartment with fully wheelchair accessible. And you can see the wheelchair turning circles plotted on the plan. Another one of the apartment blocks. Some more house types. It's a 2-bed one. Oh, sorry, it's a 3-bed house type. It was 2-bed before. 4-bed house type. Another 3-bed house type. And this is the one single 5-bedroom dwelling on the site. Another 2-bed house type. Another 2-bed house type. This is one of the street scenes. I'll show you that in a second. As you can see, relatively vernacular buildings and pedestrian in scale. Really quite attractive. Another one of the street scenes. Another one of the street scenes and the key to the street scene. So this is the wrong way around because they put it on the plan like that, but that's the access road there through Brierley Paddocks. So that's the street scene that you saw first, that's the one you saw second, and the one above here is the one that's going to surround or front directly onto the open space. So bit of difference in ridge heights, just to create a bit of variation. A mixture of brick and some brick render and some cladding. Generally very polite buildings like these. It's all held to be very attractive. Here's a kind of detailed site now. I broke it into 2 bits so you can see the detail. Surgery building here and commercial here. I mean, a point that was raised about this is that they're not going to be delivered, or there's an assertion they won't be delivered. The applicants have supplied them. I mean, it's a commercial decision as to whether the commercial building is built and fine, is a tenanted sound for that, and the surgery will only be built if the NHS wish to take that on, but it's part of the requirements of the reserve matters application to demonstrate where they are, and they are quite attractively proportioned, low-key buildings with parking tucked to the rear. As you can see, the disabled parking to the rear as well there, directly by the rear entrance, so sensibly located car park ground there. This is the access, and there's been quite a lot of discussion about that, but the access points for vehicle access here and for only pedestrians and cycle access here through into Seaview Road are already fixed and approved. The access points were approved as part of the outline permission. This is one of there's a better drawing demonstrating this in a minute, but this is the landscaping belt that has been installed, where my cursor is going around now, along the back gardens of Seaview Avenue and around the front of Farthing's Chase. One of the questions was the distance of one, I think from Councillor John Jowers. This is corner to corner is 13 metres, I believe, and over 30 metres in that direction there. These back-to-back distances, I've got a dedicated drawing to show you that, but are in excess of, I mean, the Access Design Guide recommends 25 metres. These are all in excess of 25 metres, even though they have a 5 metre deep planting belt already that was not originally proposed, but was proposed by the applicants. Some of these distances are 40 to 50 metres. So they are dwellings that already have large gardens and limited the variable boundary treatments, as you'll see from the photos and you may have seen from the video I sent out. But it's considerably in excess of the Essex Design Guide's requirements. Some of these dwellings were turned around, so they side on, which was another request of some of the neighbours. And I think the applicants have been quite forthcoming in making changes that the neighbours requested. I understand they're still, in many respects, not happy, but that's where we are. Phasing drawing. This is the affordable housing scheme. We have received a formal complaint about the committee report that addressed a number of issues. One of the major ones was the layout of the affordable housing and how we said it's in 3 sections. We said it's in 3 sections because it's in 3 sections, 1, 2, and 3. And I appreciate it is intended to be delivered in the same phase, and that's in order to deliver the affordable housing in an early phase as soon as possible, because it is a council priority. It's entirely tenure blind in terms of its construction, so there'll be good quality houses, no different to the others. They are a mix that has been agreed with our affordable housing team. In terms of the visual implications, you'll go obviously you're not going to read an estate from the air like this. They'll all just look like normal roofs if you were to fly over. But if you pass down the spine road, as you may well do, you'll see market house, affordable, 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 market house, affordable, affordable, market house down that road. Down this road, you'd see market, affordable, 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 market, market. And you'd see on this side of the road, market, affordable, market, affordable, affordable, market. So we feel it's been broken up. It makes a lot of sense to have them in the same vicinity for management purposes, for delivery purposes, and when they're tenure blind, there's no real reason to not have them relatively closely together. Many of the representations consider there to be some inherent antisocial behaviour risks to having affordable housing near other housing. The council simply don't accept that. These are affordable housing which has been required by policy, by the emerging policy at 30%. It's provided on that basis, and it's a council priority to provide it. As you can see, with the imposition of a 5-metre landscaping belt, and the applicant tells me this may well be the first phase to be delivered now, so they can get that planting belt in early, because they do want to provide it as they promised it. We simply cannot see that there's any material harm to siting the affordable housing in this location. And this is one of the key drawings. I mean, I think if there's one thing to take away from the layout, it's how green it is. There's absolutely loads of green space, whether it be private amenity space. The affordable housing and the smaller houses are all generously equipped with their own gardens. Some of the gardens towards the rural edge are way in excess of our adopted standards. I think this one at the top here, which is the 1 5-bedroom house, is about an 800 square metre garden. So that's 8 times our adopted standard. There's quite a few that are around the 400 metre square, and they still manage to provide over 3 hectares of open space on site. Our previous urban designer and our interim urban designer who helped us with this layout were really keen to provide this kind of conduit of green that runs right through the development and then turns towards the Seaview Avenue pedestrian and vehicular access here. It kind of draws you down towards the open space and the suds, the kind of suds area, the kickabout area, and the other facilities down there, and they're located at that area because the suds is down at that area, and that's where the land slightly drains to. A number of the representations have felt that it should be flipped, or it should be denser on the other side and looser on the side that backs onto Seaview Avenue. I mean, this has been guided by officers, and we're keen to retain this rural edge. So we think, in good urban design dictates really that you transition from what is currently open fields to a soft and loose layout of detached dwellings to slightly denser, still not significantly dense, but a slightly denser layout nearer the existing development, and that makes a lot of sense in kind of countryside terms. But at no point do we think that this scheme is overly dense or constitutes overdevelopment, because it's very sparsely laid out. This is a drawing that just shows you some of the back-to-back distances, for example. So this one is 58 metres from side to back, 50 metres here. I think that's 12 metres to the edge of the buffer on Farthings Lane there. The next one, so 58 metres, not even quite back-to-back, 41 metres here. And again, this is all with a decent 5-metre deep landscaping belt down the middle. 54 metres here, 45 metres here. So far in excess of what the policy requires, and as submitted it was in excess of what the policy required. But City and Country decided to change the scheme to provide this landscaping belt, and officers support that. Here's a kind of fully worked up landscaping drawing. Again, just shows you how green it really is. Take you through some photos. So that's the access as approved. Well, it won't look like that as approved, but that is the access point that is approved, and the applicants are sure that they have the right to install the access at this access point, and their legal advice tells them that they do. This is the either side of the access, dwellings either side. That is looking back up to the access towards East Road, existing Brierley Paddocks dwellings, further around the boundary to the west of the site. That's looking back across the site. That's the rear of Farthings Chase. That's the front of Farthings Chase as you come in. So it is currently open. We accept that absolutely. But we feel that with a decent landscaping belt, and 5 metres is a significant landscaping belt, that the approach to that will be very soft indeed. So rear of Seaview Avenue properties, some of. You'll have seen this on the video, but here's some pictures for you. And I'll take you back to the layout drawing. In terms of Any other representations that were made at the start of the meeting? The officers do not consider that there is inappropriate proximity. We consider that with the back-to-back distances provided, that is sufficient. As noted before, the fear of crime we don't consider to be an issue in this respect, and particularly with a big landscaping belt that will be effectively a fenced area with a gate at the southern end for maintenance. We don't have a concern on that basis, but we are recommending the imposition of a condition that will deal with that matter in terms of its management and its detail, to ensure that it's a really good landscaping belt in terms of its planting and is appropriate for the area. So I think I've talked about the access road. The access road is approved. The pond, which was noted, which is up here, you'll notice that there's a section in the committee report that deals with some matters that effectively happen outside of the applicant's ownership or control. They have the right to install this access point, as you can see at the top of this plan, but they don't have the right to install additional boundary treatment or other matters like that. They do have the right to remove some of the pond to do that, but they've made a commitment to replace any removed pond with additional pond on the other end of the pond, which they consider there is space to do. It is a matter of fact, they say, that they can install this access, and what we've asked them to do is to work with the Brierley Paddocks residents to come up with a boundary treatment that they are happy with, to try and retain trees where they possibly can retain them. Some are going to have to be removed, but they are going to try and retain any that they possibly can, to also provide a vehicular connection from their road and a crossing across the footways either side to Brierley Paddocks. As you'll see, I set out in the report, we don't have the power to condition those elements because ultimately they are on land that they don't have the power to install anything except the access on. They have made a commitment to try and satisfy some of the demands of the Brierley Paddocks residents in the interests of good neighbourliness. So I think that's where I'll leave it, and any further questions I'll try and answer them as we go on. So I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, James. I will now invite councillors in alphabetical order or to make comments or observations, please. Councillor Barton, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Couple of points of clarification more than anything else. Firstly, really pleased we actually did secure 30% social housing on this application, Councillor Jarvis. We managed it, but in relation to that, I don't know if it is possible, but is it possible that Mersea residents can be given priority for that housing? Is it something within our power? And is it possible to insist on a local organisation managing the affordable homes, which is the request of quite a few of the residents? That was the first observation. Secondly, with regard to this landscape buffer, now my understanding was that developers had actually met with some of the residents of Seaview Avenue, and as a result of this, this will form part of a planning condition, this landscape buffer. And is it correct to say that that means that it will be monitored and checked every step of the way, and that when detailed proposals are forthcoming, that these will be shared with residents and the town council? I just wanted some confirmation on that, please. Thank you. That was it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Chua, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to say I agree with Councillor Barton on the allocation of the social housing for Mersea residents to start with. The other thing I would like is some clarification, unless I'm not hearing properly or reading properly. The site that is allocated for the surgery, if it is not built there, what happens next? And where would the allocation of this money go? I don't want this money to go away, and not be used for what is intended for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazel, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can Mr. Ryan tell us just how far away from, I think is it Coast Road, where they are, where this rural edge is, So we have the development closer to the Seaview Avenue in order to have the feathering. But I'm wondering just how far away from Post Road it is, because it occurs to me
Long way.
there's a lovely big empty space there. And would the developer come back in a year's time or less and say, could I have another 100 houses? Could we have confirmation that actually the space between development where it passed and the rural element will not be built on at all? So that's one point. I'm very concerned about the Brierley paddock access. I feel very concerned for the Farthings Chase residents. And would it be possible that there is a 6-foot close boarded fence the whole way down to safeguard and secure Farthings Chase and all those properties down Seaview Avenue right down to number 43, because a close boarded fence 6 foot high together with that 5 metre barrier would give them a lot more security. And also the cul-de-sac that faces onto one of the houses in Seaview Avenue, that does need to be closed up, which of course it would be if a 6-foot fence were to be placed there, because otherwise that people in that house and those houses will get the full glare of headlights and also noise. So that's just my thoughts at the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. James, would you like to come back on those, please?
Yes, I think I'll do them in reverse order rather in my mind. Yes, I mean, the condition will secure fencing and boundary treatment right along that boundary, because the landscaping belt needs to be contained with something. And if members want a 2 metre high close boarded fence, that is what we will secure for the residents. That's absolutely fine. I can make a note of that, and that will be a condition that will be dealt with by the normal discharge of condition process. Those are dealt with via delegated powers, but we will obviously, we don't usually consult, but we can consult the neighbours in that instance. And having already discussed the matter in detail with the applicants, they are going to try and discuss it before submission to make sure that residents are happy. Got to be honest, we may get to a point where the residents still aren't happy with what's being proposed, but we can, if you're being very clear that a 2 metre high close boarded fence is what will be appropriate in your eyes, that's nice and clear. We can make sure we achieve that all the way along, all the way up the boundary of Seaview Avenue, all the way around Farthings Chase, and then back further in containing the entire close boarded fence. Containing the entire common boundary. Obviously, what we wouldn't want is a close boarded fence on the new development side necessarily, because that would be quite austere, and we want to see some of the the hedging growing through that. But I think the thoughts, and this has been discussed with the applicants and the police designing out crime team. I think the thought is that it's best to have a sort of translucent, maybe a green wire fence on the estate side, on the new estate side. So if people did, in the unlikely event that people did get in there for some reason, you'd be able to see them, simple as that, and you could see people moving. But we didn't want to create a 5 metre deep corridor. So that is why that is being dealt with by condition, and the police will be consulted on the discharge of that condition. But what I've asked is that the applicants deal with that matter directly with the police first before they submit. So what they do submit has already been agreed up front. But if it's nice and clear that we want a 2 metre high fence all the way down that boundary and around Farthings Chase, we can make sure that happens for you, absolutely. So I think that covers that. Will they fill up the open space later? Well, it's a requirement of the legal agreement. So I think it's highly unlikely. You can never say never, because you can always apply to vary a legal agreement, change a legal agreement, or make a new application. I don't think officers are going to support further development on this land parcel within the red line that you've seen, because we have resisted any more than 100 houses prior to this. So that is ultimately planning. The applicants have the right to submit further planning applications. The layout that they've created doesn't really lend itself to filling in any more, particularly as they are, through the landscaping condition, we'll be securing a public open space within that area. So I think it's pretty safe. You can never say never, because the applicants have the right to make further applications. That's certainly not the intention I've heard. With regards to the surgery, that's a very good point. The emerging allocation had a commercial area and a surgery as part of the requirements for the policy, so they're complying with that. Whether the NHS decides to go there or elsewhere within Mersea is part of a current ongoing independent assessment of the best place for the surgery. As you may know, there's one currently also mooted on a non-allocated site on Colchester Road, and there are other potential positions. The money is actually set out in the original legal agreement. We can't change that now, but that is in a cascade to go elsewhere if it isn't used there. The applicants are fulfilling their requirements by having a set of drawings to be able to provide it on site in that position, in that design that you saw at the start of the presentation, should it become a commercial possibility. But ultimately that's down to discussions with them and the NHS. They are just providing what they need to provide at reserve matter stage. Landscaping, I think I've dealt with that. I don't know if Karen would like to come in with regards to the affordable housing and its allocation. I mean, as far as I'm aware, that will be allocated by us as the council. And in terms, I'm not an expert on local provision, but Karen is, so she may be able to help you. So I'd defer to her if that's okay.
Karen, please.
Thank you. I don't claim to be an expert either, but I know we have on some new developments allowed a local lettings policy for the first, at least the first round of lettings. So it may be, Councillor Jowers talked about 10 out of the 30 perhaps being for local people. And we can certainly look into doing something along those lines.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Yes, I'm to say I'm delighted about the affordable housing, 30%. Very well, and it's good also to see the way that it has been mixed in with the marketable properties as well. I think we always wanted to see that. We didn't want to have them all concentrated in one area. And another welcome feature is, I think, the 5-metre landscaping belt. And overall, to have 3.1 hectares of open space, I can say that it lends itself to being a very attractive development. And I think that the negative part I found on this one was regarding the highways not being adopted. We've come across this before. I'm not quite sure why developers don't want to have these roads adopted, but by doing so, if they were, we guaranteed a standard, and that any deficiencies in the surface of that road can be amended by Highways Department. You don't have that control with a developer. And in 10 years hence, what commitment would they have to these roads? So can you just have some thoughts about why it's not going to be adopted by Highways? The other thing is, I would certainly support Councillor Jowers' comments and Councillor Hazel's regarding the access points. And I think the answer that James gave, I think, was acceptable. That's helpful and reassuring. But I do think that the other thing is that with the number, my internal phone. Sorry. Yeah, I think that the access points was an issue, but there are 81 objectors to this application, so we should be looking at what their concerns are, and part of it was to do with that access road. Other comments was about overdevelopment. I can't see where that argument stacks up really with the density of 8 to an acre. But they do need to be considered, and I would suggest that any further consultation along the line, should be encouraged that residents are brought into that consultation. That are my comments at the moment, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Loveland, please.
Thank you, Chair. Right, I'd like to agree with a lot that's already been said. I think we've got a great design here. but the access from East Road, I think, is very tight. And I think, could we look into what Councillor Giles said about a one-way system through there and Seaview Avenue? Could that be possible? You know, what else have I got down here? Oh, only about, I'm not happy with the way we are conducting ourselves in not doing site visits. I think we ought to see site visits, meet and go through these things. It's just one of those things. Thank you.
Thank you. We have actually visited that site. The committee has visited that site some time ago. Councillor McLean, please.
Thank you, Chair. I actually think that the site, the way it's been planned out, is quite a nice development. I think it is. There are a few pinch points, but you're going to get that. We cannot please everybody, which is a real shame. Is there? These are obviously going to be for family homes, presumably most of them. And will there be enough schooling for them, or will there have to be anything? You know, will they be able to house them all on Mersea, or will they have to come off the island? You know, I just wonder how much they're going to have to travel, because it's another problem with getting on and off the island, isn't it? And the bus routes are not particularly brilliant. But, you know, I can't see there's a real problem with it. Even, you know, people just have to share the access and work it out. But, I mean, I'm quite happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. James, would you like to deal with those particular queries?
Yes, thank you. So the issue of highway adoption, I mean, that is something that is entirely in the developer's gift, ultimately. There's no obligation and we have no policy to require it to be adopted. They are intending to have a management company manage the entire site. So it will be down to them to make sure that that it's kept neat and tidy and wholly workable. The layout is designed in line with the Essex Design Guide, with turning heads, etc., in line with Essex Design Guide guidance. So you can turn emergency vehicles, that kind of thing, no problem. They just don't want to get it adopted. It's as simple as that. And they will, you know, whoever ends up buying houses here will take on a service charge to ensure that it is maintained on that basis. And that's their prerogative, basically. And we don't have a policy that requires them for it to be adopted. With regards to Councillor Loveland's comments about, and I think it was mentioned by Councillor John Giles, a kind of in-out vehicular access. I mean, that isn't possible with this scheme because we have actively resisted an access point on Seaview Avenue for vehicular access because of the impact on, you know, the long-term impact on amenity and potential people parking on Seaview, that kind of thing, and just the additional traffic being pulled down what is currently a quiet seaside road. That doesn't mean that the applicants might not come in with an application to do that at a later date. I can't guarantee that they won't. But as adopted, as set out in the access for the outline permission, vehicular access to the north, and pedestrian and cycle access only into Seaview. A number of the objections have raised this issue because the intention is to use that access initially as one of the construction access points. So the idea is to demolish Seaview and use the Seaview Avenue as they won't be putting in a fully metallized road, but it will be an access point for some HGV movements, that kind of thing, which will allow them in the fullness of time to have maybe a marketing suite and members of the public accessing the site from the north via Brierley Paddocks without having to come into contact with construction traffic as the scheme is built out in phases. So that's the reason behind that. That discharge of condition application has been alluded to a number of the representations, and that is currently in, and we are consulting Environmental Protection and the Highway Authority on that. But the current plan is to, once this scheme is fully built out, the last piece of the jigsaw will be all the construction traffic off-site and the cycle path / footway and landscaping in where currently the Seaview Avenue dwelling sits, that is to be demolished. So there is no current plans for a kind of in-out or a one-way system throughout the estate. I think that was it. Did I miss anything?
So I don't think you have, as far as I'm aware. School, yes.
Yes, I mean those matters were dealt with at outline stage. The Education Authority, Essex County Council, did not ask for a contribution on this one or on Dawes Lane because the capacity has been, because it's an emerging allocation, it's been worked into their trajectory. They have asked for a contribution, a significant contribution, on the scheme on the non-adopted site, on the non-emerging allocated site, by the site that is not on a site within the adopted or the emerging allocated plan on Colchester Road. So they are keeping an eye on these things, and they're asking for them where the school places require that, depending on their trajectory. But the answer is no. There's no contribution to this because they consider there to be capacity.
Thank you, Councillor Oxford, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. What I wanted to say has already been said, so I vote that we go along with the officer's recommendation for approval, please, Chair.
Do I have a seconder, please?
I second that, Chair.
Councillor, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Councillor Pearson, would you like to make any comments or observations, please?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think all in all, I mean, there are a number of comments that have already been made, so I don't intend to repeat those about the design and the density. I think, you know, in terms of density, I have no concerns whatsoever. I appreciate that residents on Seaview who've lived there for a number of years and have had access to open space behind their gardens probably thought that would last in perpetuity, but these things don't. I think there's a slight misunderstanding of what affordable housing is versus social housing. So I think we just need to clarify that for members of the committee in the future. But certainly affordable housing means that the rent rate should be about 80% or no more than 80% of the local market rents. And there's my understanding is there's nothing to stop us, as Karen Syrett has suggested, indicating that a proportion of the affordable housing shouldn't be made available for Mersea residents in the first instance for a limited period of time. So I don't see any issue with that, and that might allay some of the anxieties that were raised by the local council. In terms of highways adoption, I don't propose to rehearse again all the discussions we've constantly had on this committee about the Highways Authority either not participating or not playing ball with us. One day maybe we'll have responsibility for highways. I just wanted to ask a question, and again this comes back to a similar point I made on the earlier planning application about electric vehicle charging points for each of the properties and whether or not that's built into the design. I think that was about all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. For my own part, I'd like to just pick up a couple of points raised by Councillors Moore and Jowers. I think they may have actually already been dealt with. One is about the headlights at night, is something that Councillor Moore mentioned, as well as the roads being wide enough, sufficiently wide for emergency vehicles. And Councillor Jowers did mention a lack of consultation. Is that actually correct? If you're able to enlighten us, please, James.
Yes, the roads will be built to an adoptable standard. They just don't want Essex County Council to adopt them. It's as simple as that. But it's the whole development as well will not be adopted. The whole development will be private in terms of its management, and that's just what City and Country want to do. So as far as officers are concerned, that is acceptable. There's no policy to require anything else. EV charging and a scheme of such was required on the outline, so that is something we are going to secure. However, it may not necessarily need to be quite as intensive, for example, as the previous scheme, because a lot of these are obviously private, either semi or detached dwellings, in which case you can charge in your garage or just outside of where on-plot parking is possible. We're going to try and concentrate what we do have, where some of the parking is to keep the cars from off of the fronts. To make the scheme more visually appealing, cars are tucked around behind, so we'll try and concentrate the EV charging around in those areas there. The application has been consulted upon through the normal channels via the council, like we always do. I don't think there was a period of developer and community consultation post the issuing of the outline permission, because basically it's been a difficult time for doing such things, to be perfectly honest, and a lot of public consultations have simply not happened in this pandemic period. However, since the application was submitted, I know for a fact that the applicant has been in touch with both the Brierley Paddocks residents on Zoom like this, I believe, and has also met up on site, maintaining social distance, of course, with some of the residents on Seaview Avenue, and has been attempting to overcome. Hence why there are amendments. If you have a look on the system, the scheme is different to the one that was already submitted. They were keen to get going and get these houses built, and they got the reserve matters scheme in pretty quickly, but they have made amendments since within the application period, as they're allowed to do, and that is only from or is generally from the requirements of the neighbours, because they requested the planting belt, for example, and that was provided.
You're on mute, Chair.
Thank you. Do members have any more observations, comments at all? I don't see any. No hands raised. No good. Right. We now have a proposal to accept the officer's recommendation, proposed by Councillor Oxford, seconded by Councillor Pearson. I just want to clarify the attached conditions. And correct me if I'm wrong, James. There's an agreement regarding a 6-foot-high fence. Was that agreed as a condition? You're muted, James. Sorry. It can. What we will do is we will amend the landscaping addition that has boundary treatments in it to require precisely that, and then we will impose an informative saying that members require the landscaping addition and boundary treatments condition when to be discharged. Will propose a 2-metre high close boarded fence, solid in construction, all the way along that common boundary. So it won't actually be a condition per se. I don't think it needs to be a discrete condition on its own. All right. As long as we amend the condition to achieve that and have an informative to require that, that's something we'll make sure we achieve for you. Thank you very much. And we also, would a local lettings policy be a condition? Or simply an informative? I think that's got to be an informative. We can't expressly require it. It depends on a number of factors, and it wasn't a requirement of the original legal agreement, which deals with those matters. But it's something that we will certainly try and achieve for members. And I may not agree, it's very, very sensible. But that kind of comes, well, we kind of have a condition because it might not be something that they can do anything about. It's something that we will, the list that we control effectively as a council. So I can certainly put that down. That I think I wrote that 10 out of the 30 we would attempt to get first lets to local Mersey people. Thank you. And electric charging points, that was not added in as a conditional, was it? That was conditioned on the outline. Then condition 8. That was conditioned on the outline planning consent. Okay, well, in that case, we can move to the vote. Richard, if you'd be good enough to call out the list, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll call out each councillor's name, and if you indicate whether you're voting for, against, or abstaining. Councillor Barton?
For.
Councillor Chua?
For.
Councillor Hazel?
For.
Councillor Jarvis?
For.
Councillor Liddy.
4.
Councillor Loveland.
4.
Councillor McLean.
4.
Councillor Oxford.
4.
And Councillor Pearson.
4.
That's agreed unanimously, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We have one remaining item on the agenda, and that is the item number 8, if I can just find it. Applications determined in accordance with the officer scheme of delegation. There is a report. As the author is Simon. Do you actually have anything to add, Simon, at all?
I think actually, Cyril, I wrote the report this time.
Ah, okay. It says Simon, but all right, I'll take your word for it.
Sorry.
You've got nothing further to add. It's merely a list of all those that were.
Yes, and there's additional ones on the amendment sheet that have been dealt with in between writing the report and this meeting.
Thank you very much. What I propose to do is that we simply deal with this one if colleagues go into participants and simply wave and simply raise a hand rather than go through the rigmarole. Councillor Pearson, please.
I'm just quick off the mark, Chair, to agree.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you for that. If we go to participants and raise a hand, if we approve.
Chairman, that's approved.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think that concludes this evening's business. I want to thank the officers for organising this meeting, and I also particularly want to thank James for the hard work that he's put in to these 2 applications. Thank you very much, and I will see you soon.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night, all.
Thank you.